Let us start our journey with Issacs Castle, which began its life in 1857 as a large house called Charleville. Nothing more until merchant Alfred Issacs came along in 1885 and rearranged the architecture, plonking a keep-like tower front and centre and rearranging the frontage in a Gothic style, renaming it Melrose. Isaac only got to live there for 4 years because his business went tits up and then he had to hightail it to Australia. You'll see it later became the Remuera Ladies' Cottage and got demolished in 1966. The ugly and dissuasive Mount Cook prison, come fortress, perched menacingly above Wellington between 1882 and 1931. Its central location didn't make it many friends with the locals. In the end, it was literally blown to smithereens with dynamite, having only fleetingly been used for its original purpose. Spent more time as a military and police barracks than a jail, was replaced with the much more cuddly Dominion Museum. Has a more foreboding local building been constructed? If you were into castles, you would have been writhing at the international exhibition held at Hagley Park between the end of 1906 and the beginning of 1907. To start with, take in the main building, more plaster and stucco facade than solid remo. The people in the front give you some perspective. It was 400 metres long and 115 metres from front to back. The 50-metre tall towers housed viewing decks. Rather than the stair option, one had an electric lift. To enter the funfair cum wonderland, you needed to pass through this structure. Within, you could dare to enter the Katzenyama Castle cum haunted house. I thought Katzenyama, translated from German, is hungover. Apparently it also means confused as well. That's one for the memory banks. Time to check the coolometer about Katzenyama. By the way, before I move on here, as a side story, the Christchurch exhibition almost bankrupted the local city council. A spend and hope legacy for city ratepayers like me that continues on to this very day. Carnation Castle. Behind the project, which literally took from 1933 to 1940 to complete, without the proper building authority I might add, was one Archibald George Gledhill. The locals just called him Mad Archie, with good reason. The judges in the court cases he was involved with, however, they had different names for him. There were 2 prosecutions that occurred just in the time he was there. That time ended in just 1946. The first 2 of those cases was when a local plumbing supply company successfully sued him for the debt he'd rung up. Then in the same year he was prosecuted for mistreating cattle on his land and letting them wander out on their own. 11 years earlier, in 1926, he was charged and convicted of groping a 16-year-old whilst pretending to have a secretary's job for her in a fictitious business, getting a month in the joint. The judge in that case labelled him a menace to girls. Back in 1910, he also spent some time at Her Majesty's pleasure in Littleton Jail after failing to pay for family maintenance. The judge there called Gledhill a callous father. And then there was the incident of riding his motorbike at full speed into the packed crowd. Enough background, one thinks. Absolutely perfect credentials for a madcap venture like this. Especially when you bear in mind all the supplies had to be either carried to the site on his motorbike or travel with him by bus, as Gledhill didn't own a car. The council ended up demolishing Carnation Castle in 1949. Well, feast your eyes on the main exhibition building sited in Great King Street, Dunedin. It was the first such exhibition held in New Zealand and attracted exhibitors from Canada, Austria, France and India, to mention but a few. In total, there were 700 exhibitors. Just to show you what 10,000 quid could get you back then. Unlike, say, the other great exhibitions of its ilk, Christchurch in 1906 I've already covered, those buildings were substantive and not temporary. This section ended up housing the Dunedin Hospital from 1865 till 1933. This is where some viewers will think I'm taking liberties into the traditional world of Walt Disney castles. If you're one of those, you can register a complaint on my Facebook page, which doesn't exist. Back in 1966, the low budget, high on plagiarism and concrete fun park exemplified a time when your local council knew 2 television channels weren't enough to entertain the masses, when safety wasn't a major issue. This gaudy mismatch, Alice in Pealand, included Creepy Santa was modelled on Jimmy Savile. Before we even get to the centrepiece, doubters as to its inclusion on this list should remember it was built in Windsor Park. Like Seacliff and Otago, I've covered in a recent video, Sunnyside was one of the massive lunatic asylums built in New Zealand in the 19th century. When it became apparent police cells and traditional jails weren't cutting the mustard, Sunnyside went up in 1863 and closed at the turn of the millennium, by which time Hill Morton Hospital was functioning on the same grounds. In my first job for the local council, I had a bit to do with this place. I also played rugby and football on their always well-attended grounds. Still, 2 words aptly sum up Sunnyside, neither of them attributable to its name: dark and gothic. Whilst I'm doing Sunnyside, I may as well stump up with a few Seacliff and North Otago as well. The main narrative on Seacliff can be viewed in the previous video I did, link in the description. Indeed, at one stage we did have a Luna Park, and it was literally publicised in the day as New Zealand's version of Coney Island. Luna Park opened on the Auckland waterfront in December of 1926. Many of the rides were hand-me-downs from the Dunedin exhibition of 25 to 26. It came with this distinctive entranceway, and at night it lit up like this. Packed with a massive wooden roller coaster, live acts that would be banned today, dodgems as well as dodgy arcades. It was one of the many namesake Luna Parks around the world. Despite always being popular, it always struggled to earn money based on the investment to set it up and the day-to-day costs, not helped by a large fire just 3 months after opening, which gutted the popular tea rooms and fun factory. Use your imagination here, people, on the fun factory. Luna Park NZ closed in 1931, and much of the park was shipped lock, stock and barrel to Sydney. And before you say, it's still there, yep, in part that's true. It's one of 2 self-proclaimed genuine castles still in existence in New Zealand, the other one being Larnax, just 20 kilometres up the road. 19th century Otago definitely props up this list of Kiwi castles. Currently it looks much like this. The good news is that plans are afoot to restore it to its former glory. The website for the project is now on your screen, well worth a visit and worthy of your support. Edward Cargill himself made his fortune importing tea and was a major A-list player in the local scene, Dunedin Mayor and local Otago MP at varying times. The construction of the building began in 1875 and had its problems, nothing to do with the construction process, I might add. Rather, one of Cargill's 5 daughters, Margaret, began an affair, a euphemistic term for shagging, if I ever heard one. The architect, Francis Petrie, and they would later go on to get married and to have a football team, 13 children, enough for 2 reserves. Petrie was Catholic, by the way, himself one of 16 children. His parents were able to field an entire rugby team and one on the bench. Let's go back to the building, Paul. Completed in 1877, it was gutted by fire shortly thereafter in 1892. The main driver behind the building, Eddie Cargill, died in 1903, aged 80. Several subsequent owners had a crack at running hospitality businesses from the site. You'll see in this photo it was in good fettle in 1947. However, no one could make a go of it though, and it's fallen into disrepute. I haven't visited the building in about 2 decades, and it's interesting to see it now has some very close neighbours. So that's my brief list. There is more, and there are certainly existing castles. So if castles of New Zealand are your thing, take a squiz at this Facebook site, which includes current examples as well. They've been an invaluable source and assistance here. If you want to help me create more exclusive New Zealand videos of this nature, please press subscribe. To my current subscribers, thank you very much for being a part of the team here. I do enjoy getting your comments, being chastised now and again, but who doesn't enjoy being chastised now and again? Bye for now.